Good morning. Welcome to Experts on Call. It's all in your head, a special edition of Experts on Call here on CFUN 1410 AM. And I'm your host, Peter Shad, and very excited to be with you today because what you're going to hear about today is going to change the way you think about certain symptoms that a lot of us suffer from. I'm talking about things like anxiety, depression, attention deficit disorder, autism, traumatic stress disorder, chronic fatigue, learning disorders, fibromyalgia, alcoholism and addiction, brain injuries and stroke, even sleep disorders. And what I'm going to talk about is, it's not revolutionary. It's quite a long-term type therapy with a man who, I'm surprised actually you're not a celebrity, more than you are, Dr. Swingle, because quite frankly, what you've talked about and what you've showed me in my particular brain mapping session with you is remarkable, and you wonder why more people don't know about this certain type of therapy. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Swingle is a registered psychologist, certified in neurotherapy and biofeedback. Dr. Swingle was professor of psychology at the University of Ottawa, coordinator of clinical physiopsychology at McLean Hospital, psychopsychology that is. There's a lot of psychologies in work here, and also a lecturer in psychiatric at Harvard Medical School. And after all that, you've now come to this stage where you are providing a service that can literally change people's lives, and yet so many people don't know about it. What exactly is brain mapping?
Well, basically, neurotherapy is the simplest form of therapy on the planet. What we do is we have a look at how the brain functions. And what we're looking for are inefficiencies in the way the brain is processing information. Symptoms are associated with these inefficiencies. Depression has a certain inefficiency in the brain. Attention deficit has certain inefficiencies, sleep disturbance, and so forth. We then correct it. And there are a number of ways of correcting brain inefficiencies. And once it's fixed, it's fixed. There's nothing new about this. The equipment is all FDA registered and compliant in the United States. It's all data-driven, and the good news is once it's fixed, it's fixed. And it has a 40-year-old history. It was developed initially at University of California Medical School for the treatment of epilepsy. And subsequent to that, we discovered that it can be used for a large number of conditions that are mediated by inefficiencies in the brain. And that's why I call this radio program It's All in Your Head. And the book that I've just finished is titled It's All in Your Head, because where else would it be?
I went through a long list of very common, disorders that we hear about so often that are normally treated with medication.
Yes.
And that's the whole goal of this program, It's All in Your Head, is to think differently about how you treat your condition by not using medication. And when I talk about how inexpensive it is to actually have your brain mapped and to go through the different therapies, you're going to be shocked when you hear it. In fact, I came in and we did a chart on my particular brain activity on the 22nd of August because I wanted to see exactly what it is you did. And the first thing is I sat down and Dr. Swingle put electrodes on my earlobes, and then you had 3 that you moved around my head. And how long did the whole process take?
It's 6.5 minutes of recording. Takes about 15 minutes to collect those data.
So while I was sitting there with these electrodes, which you moved around, there was data being recorded on the computer, and I could see it actually working. At one point, you put on a tone that I listened to.
That's correct.
And then I have to read something. That's the other thing I had to do.
I asked you to read something. I asked you to open and close your eyes at various times, and I played a harmonic to see how it would influence your brain activity. Actually, it was the harmonic that we tend to use for children that have attention deficit disorder. It's very effective in home treatment of these conditions.
Now, after that was all done, you got some data and you created a chart and basically did some ratios based on actual activity in my brain. From that, what did you find?
Well, first thing is you carried a trauma signature, and you've given me permission to speak about that on this program. Otherwise, I wouldn't, obviously. So that I knew at some time in your history you'd had a trauma. The implications of that can affect short-term memory, can affect sleep, it can affect, obviously, emotionality. The second thing is you had a signature for sleep disturbance and problems with stress tolerance, and you had a predisposition to depressed mood states, and you're stubborn.
Well, you kind of hit the nail on all 3 counts, and we didn't discuss that beforehand. And as soon as you started, saying that, kind of a light went on in my head that you were really legitimately onto something here. Now, if I were to be treated for those particular symptoms, what would I have to do?
There are 3 general classes of treatment in neurotherapy. The first is neurofeedback. Basically, we set it up so that we're treating one of the anomalies that we found, one of the inefficiencies. When the brain is doing what we want it to do, that is correcting the inefficiency, you'll hear a tone or see something move on the computer monitor, and it's telling you about an activity you couldn't possibly feel, but you make use of that information to learn how to correct the inefficiency in the brain. If you're a child, we set it up so that you're playing a video game with your brain. When the brain's doing what we want it to do, Pac-Man moves across the screen or something of that nature. The second class of treatments are the brain drivers. My clinic is number one in North America in the development of these things. We have actually developed equipment that other practitioners in North America use. Here we measure a particular aspect of brain functioning, and based on that measurement, we stimulate with light, sound, microamperage stimulation, electromagnetic fields, and so forth to nudge the brain into more normative functioning. Third class of treatments are home-based. Things like that sound that I played, you might use that at home on a periodic basis to modify your brain functioning. The good news is once it's fixed, so that you're not constantly medicating yourself for sleep or, depression and so forth.
You were absolutely correct about all these things. I do have a terrible time sleeping. Stress management in my job is not easy. And the trauma, I'm not sure if it counts as trauma, but losing a parent at 18, I think may fall into that category.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very definitely.
So, having said all that, and then to know exactly that you could tell that by reading this chart, really it did open my eyes. And then when you look at all the other disorders that can be treated by this without medication, really is fascinating. I'm amazed that more people don't know about this, Dr. Paul, because if you could eradicate some of these conditions without medication, first of all, there's a huge financial cost, but at the same time, you're freeing people I have a friend who has fibromyalgia, can't work right now, and so he's in that cycle of medication, and it's just getting worse and worse.
Yes, that's a typical pattern. You take some sort of medication and you habituate to that medication, so then you have two problems. You're addicted and you have fibromyalgia and you're hopeless. That develops depressed mood states. So it starts a very vicious cycle. We interrupt that by changing the condition in the head associated with the fibromyalgia. And there's a very particular pattern we often find, which is up in the frontal lobes of the brain.
If there's a condition that you have or your child has that can be cured or alleviated with this type of therapy, and because we are going back to school and everybody's back into that mode again, we're going to talk a little bit about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism and how you can help those kids get through that. When we continue with our special edition of Experts on Call, it's all in your head with Dr. Paul Swingle. Dr. Paul Swingle joins us to talk about neurotherapy and how it can treat a number of different disorders. We have talked about autism. We talked about my chart, which included sleep disorders, trauma. We want to spend a little bit of time talking about autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder because that's obviously a common one. What would be the most common thing that brings people into your offices, Dr. Swingle?
It varies. We have a lot of kids with attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity disorder, learning disorders. That's probably a third of the practice. We have a lot of individuals with stroke, closed head injury, fibromyalgia, things of that nature. A lot of depression. Autism, probably 20% of the practice, perhaps. One of the things that I think is important is attention deficit disorder is not a single disorder. That's one of the big problems that we run into. Any poor child who can't pay attention, we throw that label at them, and it's a